Hello Internet, it's so good to have you. Welcome to the Elevate online experience. It's reason for the season, week 2. Enjoy an awesome message. If you're brand new to our channels, or maybe you've been joining us for a while, how about liking our pages, sharing our pages, or maybe even subscribing to them so you get notifications during the week just in case you forget. Our awesome worship partner is Evan Cook. The words are on the screen, so maybe join in from home.
Fix my eyes on you, set my heart on you. Let every breath I breathe be for your glory. I lift my hands to you, surrender all to you, for the weight of your majesty brings me down to my knees. All the glory, all the honor to the one who gave it all. I wanna be closer to you. Fix my eyes on you. Fix my eyes on you. No distractions will keep me away. Fix my eyes on you.
So I'll fix my eyes on you and set my heart on you, and let every breath I breathe speak of your glory. I lift my hands to you, surrender all to you, the weight of your majesty, it brings me down to my knees. Hey, all the glory, all the honor to the one who gave it all. I wanna be closer to you, so fix my eyes on you, fix my eyes on you. No distractions can't keep me away. Fix my eyes on you.
Fix my eyes on you. Fix my eyes on you. No distractions can keep me away. Fix my eyes on you. Only on you, Lord. Oh, and remind me of your goodness. Remind me of who you are. Remind me of what you've done and where you have taken me, and how you have set me free. You have set me free.
And remind me of who you are, and remind me of what you've done and where you have taken me. There's a lot of tears you're defined by your mistakes, telling you that you can try, but you never change. But one thing it forgets is the power of amazing grace. See, it can pick you up even from the darkest grave. It doesn't matter where you started, it doesn't have to end in darkness. My God's the God of second chances. He won't give up on you. No matter how far you have fallen, you can still run to the Father. He is the God of second chances. He won't give up on you.
Why are you trying to pay a debt that's already paid? When you've been bought with the blood that washed your sin away. Even for the thief on the cross, it wasn't too late. Oh no, that's the power of Jesus' name. Oh, it doesn't matter where you started, it doesn't have to end in darkness. My God's the God of second chances. He won't give up on you. No matter how far you have fallen, you can still run to the Father. He is the God of second chances. He won't give up on you. Oh no,
He won't give up on you, won't give up on you. No matter where you've been, no matter what you do. Won't give up on you, won't give up on you. No matter where you've been. Oh, you're not disqualified. He'll never leave you stranded. Don't you believe the lie? Love don't run out of chances. Oh, you're not disqualified. He'll never leave you stranded. Don't you believe the lie? Love don't run out of chances. He proved it in my life. Love don't run out of chances. It doesn't matter where you started, it doesn't have to end in darkness. My God's the God of second chances. He won't give up on you.
no matter how far you have fallen, you can still run to the Father. He is the God of second chances. He won't give up on you. Oh,
He won't give up on you, won't give up on you. No matter where you've been, no matter what you do. He won't give up on you, He won't give up on you. No matter where you've been, no matter what you do. He won't give up on you, won't give up on you. No matter where you've been, no matter what you do. Won't give up on you, won't give up on you. No matter where you've been.
Today's awesome message is taken by our very own senior leader, Mark Pomeroy. Sit back, relax, and enjoy from home.
How about I unpack and you detangle? Lazy dog.
Anyway, did you get that proposal yet? Okay, good. Can you do me a favor? Give it a good look over. Hang on a second. Here. Give Dad just a minute. Anyway, did you get that proposal yet? Okay, good. Can you do me a favor?
Almost. There. Tis the season.
Well, hey there, Elevate friends and family. Great to have you with us today. Now, one of the breakout singers over the last 2 to 3 years is Olivia Rodrigo. Many of you have probably heard of her. Her 2021 debut single, Driver's License, was one of the best-selling singles that year. Her debut album, Sour, earned her 3 Grammy Awards. And you know, personally, I really like her. I like her songs. They're super catchy. I like her voice. It's great, haunting, kind of really great to listen to, easy to listen to. And, you know, so that goes to a long way as to why someone might be a great and successful recording artist. But I wonder if, as I've been thinking about it, whether Olivia Rodrigo's songs, particularly from this debut album, have this kind of X factor that flies under the radar. See, as you listen to a lot of the songs off her debut album, they're actually teenage breakup songs. And I'm thinking that's perhaps part of the hook, that current teenagers are listening to them going, oh my gosh, she totally gets me. Or if, like me, you used to be a teenager, you're listening to her and kind of going for a trip down memory lane and saying to yourself, oh yeah, that is so very true. And when someone does this, when someone sort of speaks your language, when someone sort of put words into your situation, particularly from their own personal experience, it's called empathy. And here's the unique thing about empathy, is that unlike sympathy, empathy can only be extended by somebody who's been where you are, who's gone through what you're going through. And the reason it's so powerful is that it gives you some reassurance that it's not just you, that you're not the first, you're not the only one. And potentially it's also powerful because many times the people that can extend empathy to you have actually come out the other side. This dynamic of people having been where you are and where I am also plays out in the area of faith. You know, when you have questions about God, questions about faith, questions around your circumstance, how did I end up here? Why is God allowing this? Is God even interested? When you can stumble across or connect with somebody that's been in that, and they will tell you that they've gone there, asked the questions, and from their perspective and from their experience, it's now asked and answered, that even while you're in that situation, knowing there's someone that's a couple of steps ahead of you can be incredibly reassuring. People who have asked the questions, God, what are you like? What are you up to? Are you interested? Well, chances are you have asked some of those questions, and I know I certainly have asked some of those questions, and for what it's worth, and I take great assurance from this, asking questions of God, about your circumstances, can actually happen to the best of them. And it's incredibly, incredibly reassuring to know that. Now, if you've got your smartphone camera, how about you scan this flow code? It's going to take you to John chapter 14. So John's one of the 4 biographers of Jesus' life and ministry. John himself was handpicked by Jesus and had a front row seat to Jesus' life and ministry. And so he recorded things from an eyewitness perspective. And I'm going to take us into a scene in history where Jesus, along with John and Jesus' other handpicked disciples, all of whom had been following and living with and training with Jesus for over 3 years, they were now gathered together for the annual Jewish Passover meal. They'd gathered together. They actually had traveled to Jerusalem to gather for this meal. What they didn't know at the time, and what we now know, is we now call that dinner the Last Supper. Because when they were gathered over dinner, Jesus was hours away from being arrested. And during the dinner, prior to being arrested, Jesus started teaching some of his famous last words. He tried to explain to them that he was about to be arrested, that he was going to be killed, and that he was going to rise from the dead. He pointed out the fact that one of the 12 sitting around the table was going to betray him, pointed out that another one was going to deny even knowing him, and then he said, but look, listen, fellas, don't let this rattle you. Well, needless to say, they were very rattled. Things were spinning out of control. So, right now, when all this is like, Jesus is going, he's dying, he's going to be arrested, he's going to be killed, he's going to leave us, Philip, one of the 12, pipes up and just says, Jesus, Lord, show us the Father. Like, we don't get it, but show us the Father and we'll be satisfied. You know, we're confused, we're rattled, but look, as long as we know that God's here, as long as we know that God's interested, as long as we know that God is paying attention, then we'll be fine. Even before we understand the circumstances, just to know that God's involved, we'll be fine. You ever been in this type of situation where circumstances are spinning out of control and you don't understand them? You found yourself wondering, you know, if God is not just, you're not questioning if he exists, but you find yourself questioning if he's interested in some of the specific details of your life. And maybe you've cried out to him, God, look, can you just give me a sign? Can you just give me some reassurance that you're still large and in charge and that you're interested and involving yourself in the circumstances? Because that sort of reassurance, even before the circumstances start to shift, even before the understanding of your circumstances start to grow, it can be incredibly reassuring that God is present. Now, last week we launched this series in the run-up to Christmas called Reasons for the Season, and it kind of riffs on a theme, a catchphrase that we see popping up every year around this time. Jesus is the reason for the season. And look, I get that. I like that. I like that it's designed to cut through the commercialism and the noise and remind people, or maybe inform people, that Jesus is the reason for the season. But the big idea that we've sort of started to talk about when we launched this series last week is that that's only one side of the coin. That there's another side of the coin, and that side of the coin is that you and I are actually also the reason for the season. In fact, we very much triggered Jesus coming into the world. See, if we weren't such a mess, no offense, if our world wasn't such a mess, Jesus would not have needed to come to earth to save us. No mess, requires no rescue. But we needed rescuing because we were a mess. It's not that only Jesus came into the world, that this time of the year and Christmas is a reminder that he wants to come into our world, that he wants to do something personal, bespoke, to save us. And we talked about last week, not just to save us for us, to save us so that we could be a blessing to the whole world, that our world should and can and is better off when we're influencing and contributing to it in a way that honors God. So here's the 12 disciples sitting around the table, confused, rattled, and Philip shouts out, "Lord, show us the Father, and we'll be satisfied." They wanted to see what God was like. Because it's really easy to misrepresent what God's like. You know, even people that acknowledge the existence of God, whether they think it's the Christian God, the Jewish God, some other sort of God, if you were to ask them, like, what's the God that you've got in your mind, what's he like? They'll typically be able to put some words to that. The reality is, however, that it's easy to get it wrong. And chances are you know this because you've changed your mind on what God's like over time. You've gotten more clarity. This has happened before. In fact, one of the poster boys for this is a guy named Paul. Now, Paul enters the pages of history as this like Jewish religious leader, rock star, the best and the brightest. And Paul bragged about the fact that he was sure that he was right about God and that he was sure that he was right with God. This is how he was making his livelihood. This is the reason he was so prominent, that he was sure that he was right about God and that he was right with God. However, all of that changed in the course of just half an afternoon when Paul had a personal encounter with Jesus, the actual person of Jesus. And after years of intense theological training for Paul, which would have started while he was still a young boy, one encounter with Jesus turned this whole thing upside down for him. See, he was to go on to write letters to churches in the known world at the time, and one of them wrote to a city called Philippi, and he said to them, look, as for righteousness, as for being right with God, I obeyed the law without fault, which is a massive claim, but he wrote that down. Like, I literally obeyed it flawlessly. I was right about God, and I was right with God. But then on this particular afternoon, he met Jesus, and he kind of changed his LinkedIn bio. And the update read this: Christ Jesus came into the world to save sinners, and I'm the worst of them all. So he went from flawless in following the ways of God to acknowledging that he was the worst at following the ways of God. But it really came down to him having actually a misunderstanding of being right about God and a misunderstanding of what it looks like to be right with God. He kept these rites and customs and practices and rituals, kept them flawlessly, to the best of his ability. And at that time, that was to the best of his knowledge. And he wrote this other letter to the church in Colossae, and he was talking with them about these rites and rituals and all of the things that people were in the habit of doing to try to kind of get to God, to try to understand God, to try to be right with God. And he said to them, these rules are only shadows of the reality yet to come. See, the thing about shadows is they can tell you something about the object, but they can't tell you everything about the object. In fact, they can be a little misleading. I mean, check this thing out. Look at the shadow. Look at the object. Shadows, if you just look at the shadow, it leaves too much to the guesswork. And Paul's saying that everything that came before Jesus was pointing to something, but wasn't the something. See, these rules are only shadows of the reality yet to come, and Christ himself is that reality. See, until the arrival of Jesus, when it came to being right about God, everybody guessed. I mean, they had snippets of what God was like, but they didn't have the complete and clear picture. Now, let me just, before I go on, just insert a very important qualification. When it comes to God and trying to figure him out, there'll always be mystery. You know, we're never going to understand God fully. However, starting on the first Christmas, God revealed himself in the clearest way possible. He entered the world in human form because he wanted to reveal the clearest picture to the world of what he's like. So, let's go back to the Last Supper. Remember, Jesus is just about to be arrested. He's gathered his 12 disciples together. It was the Jewish Passover meal, but for them it was going to be the Last Supper. And they traveled from Galilee to Jerusalem and found themselves having this meal in Jerusalem. And his 12 followers, they thought Jesus was a king. And in fact, they thought the reason that Jesus was going to Jerusalem is that Jesus was going to overthrow the Roman occupiers and insert himself as king of the Jewish people in Jerusalem. And then they sort of like connected the dots and like, well, we're close to the king, so then things are going to go super well for us. But Jesus is starting to talk about his imminent betrayal, his imminent arrest, one of them denying him. And he sort of, no doubt, could sense the growing confusion and the growing tension in the room. And so he said to his disciples, don't let your hearts be troubled. Seemingly, their hearts were being troubled. Trust in God and trust also in me. See, right here, Jesus is equating himself with God. And as crazy as that would have sounded to the disciples, for whatever reason, they stuck around and listened, and Jesus continued. There's more than enough room in my Father's home, and if it weren't so, would I have told you that I'm going to prepare a place for you? When everything's ready, I'll come and get you so that you'll always be with me where I am. And you know the way to where I'm going. So picture the disciples sort of looking at each other. Jesus is going to die. He's going to leave. We can't go with him, but he's going to come back. He's going to go to his Father's house. He's going to come back for us. And very, very, very confusing. And probably looking at each other going, is somebody going to say something? No, we don't know, Lord, Thomas said. We have no idea where you're going. So how can we know the way? Well, it's not the last time people have asked this question. What's the way? What's the way to God? Well, Jesus told Thomas, I am the way. The way is not a path. The way is not a route. The way is a person. I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one can come to the Father except through me. Now, if you've been in the church world for a little while, you'd know that this verse and this concept is sort of contextualized as like Jesus is the way to heaven. And that's 100% true, absolutely. However, there's a little bit more to it when Jesus declared this, or when Jesus responded to Thomas asking, we don't know the way. And Jesus says, I am the way. Nobody comes to the Father except through me. He was saying to them, you want to know what the Father is like? Don't look past me. In fact, you don't need to look past me. And the next thing he says is either blasphemy on an unforgivable scale, or it's true. Jesus continued, if you had really known me, you would know who my Father is. So from now on, you do know him and have seen him. Like, I came here to reduce the mystery. I, Jesus, am as clear as it gets. And that's why I grabbed you guys and dragged you around for 3 years, because I wanted you to see what God is like. I wanted you to see how God operates. I wanted you to see what God values, who God loves. And because you know me, you now know what God is like. And from this point forward in history, the world will know what God is like, because I came to dwell here. God himself in me dwelt among you. And this is the second reason for the season, that Jesus came to show us what God's like. And I suspect many of you joining us today, you're already convinced of this. However, Jesus' disciples in this moment were not. They were more confused than ever. Philip, as I said read earlier, Philip said, Lord, show us the Father, and we'll be satisfied. Jesus says, have I been with you all this time, Philip, and you still don't know who I am? Anyone who's seen me has seen the Father. So why are you asking me to show him to you? Don't you believe that I'm the Father, in the Father, and the Father is in me? The words I speak are not my own, but my Father who lives in me does his work through me. Well, Jesus drops the mic, gets arrested. They're all like, oh, sure, okay, cool, I get it now. Jesus is God, God is Jesus. We've lived, followed, seen Jesus. We've now seen the Father. But actually, no. They still didn't get it. At least not that night. But they eventually got it. They eventually got it after Jesus rose from the dead, after he appeared to them fully alive. These were the men, these doubting, questioning, rattled, baffled, confused men, along with Jesus' earliest female followers. These were the people that ensured the claims of Jesus survived the first century. These were the people who, having ensured that Jesus' claims survived the first century, set the ball in motion for those claims to still be accessible today, for the generations to come. Jesus' big idea, like Father, like Son. A reason for the season. Hey, I'd love to personally invite you to come back and join us next week. We're going to finish the third and final reason for the season. Bring somebody, put on some hot chocolate if you're in the northern hemisphere, or a cool drink if you're in the southern hemisphere, and let's continue to prepare our hearts and minds as we lead up to Christmas together.
If you've been joining us for a while now, or maybe you're fresh to our channels and you'd like to help us reach and build into people just like you all over the world, the ways to give can be found just below. And while I'm at it, if you want to listen from work or from home, the ways you can listen are from any of your favorite podcast apps, Spotify or Podcastbean. Thank you so much for joining us for week 2 of Reasons for the Season. It's been an absolute pleasure having you as always, and we'll see you next week.